This was a new little item in my thrift store. Usually I like to wait until they hit their like third markdown, and then grab them up so I can get them for as cheap as possible. But I knew this was not going to be there when I came back, and I really wanted to redo this. It's in really good shape. I mean, it took me no time at all to take everything apart. It's really solid. I was even in the store kind of like shaking it to see if like any of the metal pieces would pop out. But once I got it home and I really looked over like the wood, like those metal pieces are really, really in there. It's very sturdy. So I felt we could just make this a little farmhouse, rustic-y type of birdhouse. And if you're familiar with me, you know my style is just, it's very eclectic. And I don't like just doing one thing. I like doing, you'll even see like I do, we'll get there. I'm not trying to jump. Anyhow, look at how cute this little clasp is. It's super, super cute. There was this sticky stuff, and I have absolutely no idea what it was. But I did take my card cutter and go over this piece very thoroughly. I saved you all the cleaning. You're welcome. I wanted to get to the fun stuff, the spray paint. And we're taking just flat black and doing one little thin coat over the birdcage before we put the white on. But when I reach for the white, so I came out to start spray painting, and I have to show you guys what is hanging onto this spray paint bottle. It's so tiny. Let me see if I can focus on it. Can you guys see this tiny itty bitty baby praying mantis? Did you see him move? Look at him moving. Oh my goodness. I've never seen one this tiny. Look how cute. Oh my goodness. We're going to have to put this spray bottle off to the side because I got to make sure nothing happens to this little guy. Since my flat white Rust-Oleum can was busy, I moved on to my chalked can. I usually like to use this after I put the layer on. It's just a preference, people. Okay, it's how I like doing things. Anyhow, I layer it up. Actually, I put a couple layers on, let it dry. I save you all that. I know some of you are picky about spray painting. But now let's get to the fun part, which is my favorite part, which is the accents. I love the little details of anything and just putting in the little touches that make it, personal and just a piece of you to put out into the world for other people to love. It's my absolute, it's my favorite. It's not every day you come across cabinet cut up doors with, holes in them. Well, at least not for me. Maybe you guys do. But I purchased these and have been holding on to them for, a minute now. They were about $2. I think they were $2.09 actually each. And I'm going to use them as a set here, kind of make this little, set you're going to see in a second here. I picked these up from Hobby Lobby, 99 cents each when they were running their little clearance. You got to get it. Well, 99, some of them little I got a whole bunch of knobs, by the way, 50 cents. I'm getting, okay, sidetrack, project, video. Layer of black flat spray paint. Then we're going to add our 2 times Rust-Oleum white. Then we're going to stop. We're going to let this dry, and here's why. We need to bring this in and put in our little knobs. Now, I did have to cut these down, and I did this by hand with a metal cutting saw, and it was painstaking, and I cried a few tears. Oh, my carpal tunnel was killing me. Oh my gosh. Anyhow, get your little drill bit, clean up your mess, and then measure, how far you're going down. Make sure you don't go through the back unless you're putting it through the back and going in that way. I was not. I didn't want to go through the back. So I made sure not to do that. I am using a Gorilla Glue gel to hold this in place. I don't want this going anywhere, and I don't want whoever ends up with it to worry about it going anywhere either. So I did the same thing to both, drilled the little holes, made sure I didn't go through the back, double checked my measuring, and then had them all done. Once they were completely finished, I took them back outside and now brought in my Rust-Oleum chalked paint and gave it a nice thin layer and covered over top of the little, little handle, little knob piece. Brought it back in. Time for the accent. More of my Dixie Belle black wax. Love this stuff. Love this stuff. Little gem was actually in really a good condition. There were some scratches, but nothing I was really concerned about. It wasn't even that dirty. Now, I did clean all my pieces with some Dixie Belle's White Lightning. I saved you all from watching that. You're welcome. You're welcome. And at first I thought I wanted to chalk paint it. So I'm gonna, if you watch Sammy over at Unicorn Dust Design, she always, puts a matte spray paint and then she'll chalk paint it. So that was my idea for this. I let it dry and then thought, nope, we're gonna spray paint it with my new Dreamy Lavender. And it didn't matter that I had already had the matte on there or whatever, but I plan on using that in future techniques as well. And I know it's beautiful just the way it is, but come on, we're me, and I can't leave it alone. So we're going to take some Dixie Belle's Silver Gilding Wax and just put a little on our finger and highlight these little pop-outs where, these little diamonds kind of enter. So really, we're doing the whole thing. We're just going to, rub it on there every little which way. And you don't have to do this. It was honestly beautiful just how it was, but I can't control myself. So then I'm just taking some Waverly white wax. And the reason I'm going to do this isn't your typical reason. Usually the wax will get in all the crevices. I did not want it to get in the big dips. What I wanted it to do was kind of mute the brightness of the gilding wax and then kind of blend it all to make it look like one cohesive, like all the colors just kind of came in. So you'll also see how I could have left it in the dips or, rubbed out. I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to look like it muted it. I was very, very happy with the final outcome. You do want to let this dry a little bit before you do anything else because it will move to your touch. And then I added some white nautical rope from Dollar Tree and a beautiful solo wood flower. And that's it for this one. I wasn't sure where I was going with this, but I like where I ended up. Did have this marking on the end. Someone made these and wrote on it. I thought it was precious. I decided not to sand it off. I did, however, decide that we're going to make this like a handle basket type thing and started taking everything apart, and I pulled the little pipes off, and this one came out really easy. But the other one is wood glued in there, and no matter what type of plier I was using, it would not wiggle off, just the pipe piece came off. So I took a little hacksaw and just started to hacksaw that Bama up, and it popped right off after a minute or so. Just be careful, and then if there is an indent like there is here, go ahead and sand it down. Now I'm putting something over this, so I wasn't too worried about that, being a mess. Now we're going to build our basket. So You're going to need a 1x4 and then some painter sticks, large ones if you have it, and cut it to size. I cut it so it could fit in a shipping box because I am going to resell this piece. So I made sure that the piece was cut to size, sanded down the little edges so it was, you know, soft. We didn't have like spikies around. Then put that in the center with the two sides from our thrifted piece and measured these painter sticks. So I had 2 on each side to create our basket. Made sure that they were all the same size. In case you're not familiar, you can pick these up at Home Depot for like 99 cents in a pack. You get several of them, and you know, they're thick, they're nice, they're neat, and it saves you a lot of cutting. If you don't want to use a big miter saw like this, you can use a little box, or even some people have those, like, I don't know, gator cutters or whatever you call them. Now these also have like marks on them, you know, so we got to cover that up. I'm using my favorite Bullseye 123 primer just to kind of hit them up to cover this up, so once we paint it, this is not going to show through at all. Now for the fun part. Yes, there's clay involved. So I'm using this mold that I have that I purchased off Amazon, and the Creative Paper Clay. It's my new favorite paper clay. Well, it's my new favorite clay. It's very soft. I'll explain that in a second. To start off, if you're not familiar with this, put some cornstarch in there. It will stop your piece from sticking and it will come out very easily. I've tried several different types of clay. The reason I like this one the best is I have carpal tunnel syndrome and I have some other issues with my arms and my hands, whatever. Long story short, this peels off very easy with minimal pressure being applied to it, and it doesn't look a hot mess. It dries in 24 hours just like any of the other ones I have tried, but it is very manipulatable. So that's why I use this. It's my new favorite, you know, for anyone wondering. Take yourself some wood glue. You can use whatever you want, but I use wood glue to put these on my wood pieces. I have had good success with them and no one has complained yet. Let them dry like this. Beautiful. I love these. Adding these ones to the bottom. Now for the construction aspect, you will need, well, this is what I use. This is what we will need for this project. Some wood glue and our nail gun. You're welcome to use some nails and a hammer if that floats your boat. It will not float my boat, so this is how I'm rolling with it. Make sure you put your wood glue in before you start, you know, nailing. I don't know why this nail gun, well, at least I didn't think I knew why the nail gun wasn't working. And I was just, you know, the reality, it was not hitting me, and you'll see what I'm talking about right here. Just, I couldn't wrap my head around why it wasn't working. The little light was coming on, it was making the noise, but we were out of nails. Now, there may have been an easier way for me to, you know, hold this so I wasn't out of breath, and this is how you know you're out of shape. But, you know, I got it in there. It worked. And then I started just attaching the sides. And of course, it's short for use, but I was going through it. I tried to just give y'all a little bit of a taste of my struggle here. What's happening? I just put more in there. I don't know why I continued running out. I don't feel like I used that many nails, okay? Anyhow, I'll probably get comments down there. But this is a dowel that I had from a mixed pack I picked up from Walmart. I think it was like $5.99. come different sizes. I trimmed it to size and added some wood glue on each side. I was lucky enough that the holes that were already in there were the perfect fit for this, and thought this was going to be an easy peasy thing, and of course it just was not. Oh no, I cut it too short. No. I finally got myself together and, you know, cut it right and then squeezed it on in there, cleaned up the mess that I made with the wood glue, let all of this dry, and then came on in with our true navy ultra matte to spray paint this. I don't know, I was feeling bluey this day with this project. I was feeling blue. If you can't tell by just my blueness, at the end it's beautiful. It's stunning. I love it. But anyhow, we're gonna decoupage. Have you met me? Decoupage. If not, welcome. I picked this up off of Amazon. These papers came in a pack. They're fairly thin. They're not napkin thin, but they're not Hobby Lobby paper quality thick. So if that's, you know, helping you, they're fairly thin. I just picked out, you know, the sections that I wanted to go on the little slats of wood that I had here, took some Mod Podge, lathered it up, and then put it on. I do not show it, but I used 120 grit sandpaper to go, and once this dried, you want to make sure it's completely dry, because if you try to sand it and it's not, your paper will move. So make sure it's dry. So I let this dry for several hours and then went back with the sand block and sanded all the edges down around the paper that, you know, was hanging off a little bit. With something like this, you could, you know, take the Mod Podge and fold it around the sides. I did not want to do that for this project, so I wanted everything to be sanded, and that's how I left it. For this next part, I'm taking Dixie Belle's Paint Blue and I'm coloring in the cross section. I thought that this would kind of give this a nice, you know, it kind of looks white, but it's a baby, very, very, very beautiful baby blue. I really like this color. I have used this before on my desk that I painted, in case you guys did not see that video, but took this and put inside of the cross and inside of the little, you know, our little applique. Now we're going to take Waverly wax, antique white Waverly wax, and go up and down the piece. And I know what you're thinking, oh, but this is not what we're going for, okay? What we're doing is, in case you didn't see it, this piece actually has very dominant wood grain pieces. So what I want to do is get this wax in those wood grains with this dark blue color. So you want to go with the grain of wood, smushing it in there, and then you want to wipe it sideways so that the wax is just in the grain. You want to completely wipe down all the wax that's on the top so you just have the wood grains. Look at that. It's so beautiful, and it is all stuck in them wood grains. It gives it a very, very, very vintage look. I love this. Now this was painstaking and it took some patience and some time, so if you have a piece that you want to do this to, keep that in mind. But this was what it looked like while it dried. Of course I can't leave nothing alone, so I'm coming back in with the antique Waverly wax and going in, you'll see why in a second, going in some of them deep crevices and just kind of hitting it up, adding some of this all around in the cross, making it look more vintage, adding some around the outsides, and then we're going to take our Dixie Belle's gilding wax and just lightly go over the piece, and this is what you'll have when you're done. To start off, I always like to check over my pieces and see exactly what I'm getting myself into. Fortunately for me, this piece was in pretty great shape. We're just going to use some crud cutter and some paper towels to wipe this little gem off. It's not in that bad condition. Once you're done with your crud cutter, just go over it with a little bit of water. Depending on how dirty your piece was, you might need a bucket. I just used a little water on paper towel. Then I looked this over and noticed there was some cracking and some, I don't know, some little tiny baby scratches. It wasn't serious, but I did feel like, let me get some sandpaper and wrap it around my little block I have here. So I'm just taking 150 grit and just going over the top. I'm not going over the whole piece for, you know, I'm not doing it. Okay, we're not doing it. So we're just going over the top, and then we're gonna wipe down any excess with just a little bit of water so we don't get that in our paint. Say hello to my little stalker. That's my Harley. In case you guys are not familiar with me, that's my baby. We are going to create a raised stencil look on this, and I'm going to use some joint compound and mix that up with some of my paint that I'm going to be using to paint the piece. I printed this stencil out with my Cricut. You guys can use whatever you want. This is what I'm using, and I'm just going to fill in each one of these. I let the piece dry overnight and wanted to just show y'all, like, as I'm scratching and I'm rubbing, like how well a little bit of sanding and then add your joint compound and it's really stuck on the piece. Like, it's really on there really well. I'm pretty sure this piece is going to bleed all over the place. So to make sure that that doesn't happen, I'm going to use this Boss from Dixie Belle. Usually to prep my piece when I put on like a primer type thing, I use Kills, and if you've watched any of my other videos, I'm pretty sure in one of them, like I had to toss paintbrush out. This stuff is so smooth. There's no smell to it. It was dry in like an hour, probably less if I paid attention. It was just amazing. And I'm going to use these two light colors, a drop cloth and a cotton. I am selling this piece, so I want to make sure that it's in colors that people are going to want to purchase and not, you know, farmhouse and boho is kind of in right now, so that's, you know, modern's into, but that didn't get voted in, people, so this is what we're rolling with. Okay, back to the painting. I really wanted all the pieces to just kind of blend together, like, you know, have some farmhouse, some boho with the cream, and you know, I was trying to, you know, blend it all together, make sure it was, you know, a blended mess. That's what, listen, I was being artsy, and that's where I'm rolling with it. We were artsy. Just watch my artisticness flow. If you don't like it, you know, you ain't gotta hang out, but you might hurt my feelings if you leave. Anyhow, okay, back to this. Okay, I gotta be honest, if I'm being 100 with y'all, once I started this antique Waverly wax, it really started going downhill. I knew that I wanted these points to stick out. What I didn't know was how many layers it was going to take me. So I started with antique Waverly wax and started rubbing it in, and then switching to the Rust-Oleum metallic. Pearl white is what I used. I don't have a picture of that. I'm sorry. Don't hate me. Went back and forth, adding layers, and just did not love it. I'm like, there's something going on here. Finally, after about another, I think I did 3 full layers of antique Waverly wax and 2 of the pearl, I really started liking it coming together, and then took my chippy brush with some of the cotton very lightly and dry brushed the entire piece so it all blended together. I took the easy peasy spray wax, not with a cloth because it started falling apart on me in the project. Don't even go there. I used a brush and love it. I picked this piece up off the Facebook Marketplace for about $10. I think it was pretty good price. Other than these terrible stains, it's in really good condition. Everything's put together well. There was a little bit of peeling with some of these pieces, but I'm not going to stress it. I decided to sand this down before I did anything else because I am going to paint it, and there was a little bit of raising and a little bit of cracking. The staining I'm going to deal with as well, but we'll get to that. First, I want to handle this. All this peeling, this cracking. There's my girl. Say hi, everybody. Hi, Harley. We're going to start off by using our wood glue, and I'm using Type Bond. We're going to smoosh it on in here. This is my favorite wood glue. If you're familiar with me, you see me using it. If you're new, take notes, people. Take notes. I'm just kidding. Don't take notes. Well, you can take notes if you want to. But we're going to clamp it on down once you've smushed your wood glue in there, and we're going to let that dry. To take care of the feet, I'm going to use this plastic wood filler for the ends of the feet. Once it dried, I sanded it on down so the feet were all even. I'm going to paint the top of this, and I'm spray painting. It's nice out. I love to spray paint, so I can't never wait to get outside with a can of spray paint. Like, we're gonna spray paint this. So we're gonna spray paint the bottom black. This beautiful, I'm a huge Rust-Oleum fan. I love this flat black, and we're just going to go over the whole thing. Now, mind you, I did let this dry for hours before I decided to do this to make sure that wood glue and the wood filler was all dried, and I did clean the piece down very well. For those of you who are wondering, yes, I took my crud again. I keep forgetting, oh Lord, and I cleaned it. And then I'm taking a little bit of this clear coat, and I just did one and sprayed the bottom before we brought it in to address the stains on the top, which I'm going to use this Dixie Belle Boss for. While I do use kills from time to time, Dixie Belle Boss goes on like butter. You don't even know that it's there. It is so easy to use if you're just starting out using paints and you need something to help with the stains. It's an amazing blocker. Believe me, I've used several of them. That is such a great one to start with. For the top, I decided to use a high density roller to roll this one. Dixie Belle is self-leveling, and while you don't really see brush strokes, as long as you're mindful, it does level itself out. But to really get such a beautiful finish, rolling it just helps even more. And I love how this piece turned out. We're going to be making over these little metal bins I picked up at my local consignment shop for just 50 cents with two completely different creative ideas. Did you know that you could easily attach clay to metal? Just grab you a mold like this one. Whatever mold you would like will be just fine. And some clay. This is my favorite clay. Now you use whatever clay works best for you. This is just one of my favorites. I do have it linked down in my Amazon affiliate link down in the description box for anyone interested. I took a little piece from a package I already had open in a baggie, and since it was sitting for a bit, it was starting to get a little bit crusty. But that's okay. I wasn't worried about it being crusty because I want the piece to look a little bit old. A tip though for you, if you don't want your clay to get crusty, take a little water bottle or just some water in general and either spray it on the clay or put a couple drops in the clay. It'll moisten it right up and take care of any cracking that might be happening. Me, however, I just smushed that clay right on in our mold, and then I took my little scraper tool. I don't really know what the name of this is, people, forgive me. For today and this project, it was a scraper tool, and I got all the excess clay off the back because we don't really want it popping off our piece. When you're happy with your mold, then fit it to size, because as you see here, our mold is slightly bigger than where I want to put it. So I'm just trimming off that little nugget right at the bottom. To make sure our clay piece is on here nice and snug, I'm going to be using some tacky glue for that. Now people, you don't need to get wild and pour a whole bunch on here, okay? You just need a little bit, just like this, and then take your finger and gently smoosh it all around the back. Now, if you do put too much on there, it's okay. Lucky for us, tacky glue does dry clear. But in this case, less is more, okay? Less is more. Just cover the back. And then gingerly press down your mold, making sure to not ruin the design. You will also have different opinions of how to attach clay. I will say that when I'm doing wood, I will use wood glue instead of tacky glue, but tacky glue for me on metal. For the paint, I'm gonna be using Letterpress Gray by DIY. If you're interested, my girl Sammy over at Unicorn Dust Design sells this, and I usually have a link down in my description box. I want to have a stone type finish, and I'm taking a pouncer to get the first coat over this, because just like with glass, in my opinion, a pouncer works so much better getting that first layer on here. And I am taking a paintbrush to get in those little teeny tiny creases of our mold that the pouncer would not fit in. Take this idea and remix it using whatever type of paint you would like. It's always a good idea whenever you go to paint something to make sure that you check the labels so you know whatever paint you have, it's going to work with whatever material you're painting on. For example, if all you have is acrylic paint and you look at the back, it's going to tell you that it works best on porous surface, and people, that's kind of something like this. It's going to be able to absorb that paint. And people, this don't mean you have to break the bank to paint. Grab some chalk paint and mix it with some of that acrylic paint color that you love. As you can see here on the back of this chalk paint bottle, it says that it works well with metal. So adding a little bit of this is going to give you a result kind of like this. And if you want more of a textured appearance that you can get oftentimes with those artesian paints, add a little bit of calcium carbonate or some baking soda to the mix. In my experience, sometimes your clay shrinks, and you will notice that there are gaps after you apply your first coat of paint. An easy way to fix that is to take a little bit of that paint and go around the edges. This is especially good using a chalk paint. The DIY paint is also perfect for this. And if you add in baking soda or calcium carbonate, or if you put a little bit of spackling into your paint as well, that will help give you a little bit of a bond wherever there's some cracks. Just make sure that once you're done filling in those cracks, you kind of spread the paint out along the piece so you don't have these weird bumps all around your clay pieces. When your piece is all dry, you can absolutely leave it like this, or you can take a little bit of paint, put it on your finger or some gilding wax and go over some of those raised areas, giving it a little something something. You don't have to. If you want to seal it, go right ahead, especially if you're going to put it outside like I did here with this beautiful piece. You want to make sure that you're using an outdoor friendly sealer, so this way if the weather gets to it, it protects your paint and your clay. For these two metal bins I picked up from my local consignment shop, we're going to turn them into some beautiful decoupage planters. A really inexpensive paint that works well on metal is this multi-surface by Folk Art. And people, I will tell you, I had to do like 4 coats of paint, but it holds well and it works well. And I decided to use the biggest pouncer that I could find because I knew I was going to have to do several coats of this. But I wanted to share this with you at home for those of you that don't have a lot of options to artesian paints or want to spend the money on chalk paints. You can absolutely do this with a multi-surface. Just get you a giant pouncer or sponge to save on time with painting. I don't even want to know how many coats this would have took me if I tried to paint this on here with a paintbrush, going over any of the little streaks and uneven spots. And just so you could see at home how amazing using a pouncer works, I did not speed up this section at all. The only thing that really took me time was waiting for things to dry. For the decoupage, we're going to be using this beautiful napkin that I was just sent by a subscriber. I have never come across this napkin before and I could not wait to use it. Now you will see that there are little bumps. There's little bumps. And for those of you at home that come across napkins and you're like, oh, we got to put this back, we can't decoupage with it, you better stop playing with me. Buy that napkin. Let no bumps stop you from being able to decoupage. Let me show you how to fix that. First, we're going to just need to get that decorative layer. So get them sneaky layers off your napkins by whatever means works best for you. I personally like to tear a little corner and it usually reveals the extra layers, and then you just pull all the pieces off. Now we're going to need to bring on in our iron. Now any iron will work, okay? I like to turn this little joint all the way up because it just makes me feel fuzzy inside. There's no real rhyme or reason. I grabbed a little piece of wood as a brace so I didn't basically burn my table and staging I had going on here. And if you want, you know, bring on in the parchment paper while you're at it, okay? I don't want nobody being like, Brandy, you should use parchment paper. Honestly, people, it is possible to burn the napkin. So, or that the ink might not be completely, you know, in the napkin and it might pull off the napkin. So the parchment paper, it does protect it, okay? It does protect it. And I have had people ask, can you use wax paper? I've used wax paper in a pinch, but keep this in mind. Wax paper is to prevent sticking. Parchment paper is for heat, okay? And as you can see here, one side has no bumps and the other side has bumps. Of course, the longer you iron the napkin, the less the little bumps will show up. I just wanted to share this with you in the video for anybody who has never experienced this or decided that they didn't want to decoupage using napkins that they've seen like this. Stop it. Stop doing that to yourself. For this particular project, I just want to trim down the florals in the center, and I'm going to use a little bit of water on a paintbrush. You guys can obviously trim that out however you want. I don't have the hand grip strength it takes to use scissors and cut perfectly around the design. So this works best for me, and then I just blend out the napkin around the edges. I don't like using scissors to necessarily cut completely in the white because you can see how that looks very divided up against even white paint. So this just works best for me. For our medium, we're gonna be using some good old Mod Podge. Use whatever medium works best for you people. This is just one that I'm really comfortable with. And I know those of you that are familiar with me are like, Brandy, where's a fan brush? Listen people, I'm in between fan brushes right now. I used to get the ones I really like from Timo, if I'm being honest, and they have not had them lately. And I have a lot of people ask me where I get them, and that's where I usually grab the ones I really love, but they haven't had those lately. So I'm in between fan brush loves, okay? When I do find some, you know, I'm gonna tell you about it. So for right now, I'm just using a synthetic brush, and I am putting a little bit of Mod Podge section by section and applying our napkin. I also like to make sure that I go around the complete edges of whatever I'm decoupaging to ensure that it's seamless. So take some time doing that. Once your piece is dry, feel free to go over it with whatever sealer you would like. I allow mine to dry before I do a final seal over, and I think these turned out so beautiful. I was really excited when I found this piece at the thrift store. People, how many of you know what this old wood piece is? Some people would use this as a spot to put their little recipe box right on, and others, they would use it to put candles. We're gonna upcycle this joint, so we have a more updated version to put some candles. This piece wasn't too dirty, so I just used a little bit of warm water in my spray bottle with a paper towel to give it a nice rub down. It's a good idea to clean whatever you're upcycling so you don't have any crusty bits stuck between your piece and whatever you're applying it onto. I mean, look at that. Do you really want that underneath your paint? This piece also had these weird foamy things on the back, which I'm assuming were to stop it from, you know, making scratches on the wall and even kind of give it a brace to pop out from the wall a little bit, but we're not going to be needing them, so off they came. Instead of me completely stripping down this piece since it's so small, or taking the sealer completely off, or sanding everything completely off to the bare wood, I decided to just give it a really light scuff sand. This is going to allow the paint or whatever medium I'm going to apply onto here just to stick that much better. And since I've used Waverly's chalk paint many times on scuff sand, I know that I'm gonna get a really nice result that I love. Please use whatever paint you feel works best for you. I am confident with this paint, so I decided to roll on with this one. Now, a little tip for you whenever you're covering over something, you might notice that after your first layer, you'll have paint strokes. An easy way to eliminate wasting a ton of product or having to repaint something multiple times is to go the opposite way on the second coat. I can usually get away with applying 2 coats of Waverly to pretty much anything that I am painting using this little trick. It just fills in all the little spots going the opposite way on the second layer that the first layer didn't get. Now we're gonna apply a layer of Crackle onto this. People use whatever method you would like to get this look. This is my favorite way, if I'm being honest. I've tried many. This medium by far is easy and I love the results. I'm putting a nice healthy layer all over the whole piece except for the back. Make sure you let this stuff completely dry, my friends. You do not want to attempt to paint over this prior to that. It's going to look just like this, and honestly, it looks like a sealer, right? It looks pretty sealed, but it's not. We're going to need to apply some paint. For our top layer, I'm just going to be using some Waverly in the Snow White. If you have never worked with this stuff before, people, it is not forgiving, okay? It is a great idea to load up your paintbrush. Load it up, load it up, load it up with your paint, okay? And then just do long strokes. See how I'm starting at one end and pulling? And I say this because if you try to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, for whatever reason, it's going to pull the medium, and then it's just going to be a solid coverage. And that's going to kind of suck the purpose out of you putting the crackle. Now, if you want to have some solid sections, then by all means, go back over it, go back over it, go back over it. But we don't want to do that today, okay? We want these beautiful little baby cracks all over the place. And in some places, we even want big cracks. So to make that happen, we're going to take a heat gun. This beautiful heat gun was sent to me by a subscriber. Thank you so much. I never knew that heat guns leveled up, okay? Because I've went through a couple, and this sucker, by all means, it's got like settings and it gets hot. You can, anyhow, see how the cracks are getting way bigger the more heat you're applying to them. You can really control how crackly your pieces get as long as you use a heat gun. If you don't use a heat gun, you'll still have some nice cracks, but they won't be as dominant. If you're happy with it, seal it up, leave it alone. I, however, am going to apply some dry rub-on transfers to the back for a little design. These transfers are part of my personal creative brand called TDS, which is an acronym for the DIY struggle. This transfer set includes 2 8x10 pieces and can be found at the DIYstruggle.com for anyone that's interested. Right here is the entire set. You even get directions and a little card to help you apply your transfer. I just cut the little design out that I wanted to apply onto our piece here, and people, please use whatever transfers you want. You do not have to use these in particular to get this idea to be remixed with your home decor with what style works for you. I just like to remind people that, hey, I have a little creative brand that you can find different things at the DIYstruggle.com. Check it out. Some of the designs might work for you, and if not, doesn't matter. Take my ideas and inspiration and remix it into things that will work for you at your home with your decor, or for gift ideas and all the things. You guys know where I'm going with this. Feel free to seal over your transfers if you do have these at home and you're looking for ideas, because I know so many of you do. Just make sure before you apply the transfers that everything's completely dry. You know what I'm saying? Make sure it's dry before you go trying to pop your transfers on here. Love how this piece turned out. It's not every day that somebody gives you an old bread box, and there are so many other things that I really want to use this bread box for. No, I'm not selling it. Yes, I'm keeping it, and it is going to be one of the largest iron-on decoupage method pieces that I've ever done. Welcome to that video. But first, we're gonna have to do a couple squirts. I did actually rinse this off really good with soap and water and a little bit of crud cutter, and decided that I wanted to kind of just go around the edges one more time, especially because I didn't film any of that, and you guys like watching me clean stuff. For the decoupage portion, we're going a little steampunk today, people. This beautiful print is called Lonely Solomon, and it is a 17 by 23 inch piece of tissue paper. For anyone interested, it can be found at the DIYstruggle.com. It's part of my TDS creative brand decoupage paper line. And people, by all means, use whatever tissue paper, decoupage paper you would like. Take this idea and remix it with what works for you. Now, as far as the iron-on method goes, pick a medium. I'm using Mod Podge. There are several mediums that you could use, and you're going to want to lather up the section sections really well that you plan on doing the iron-on method. Once your piece is dry, you're going to want to bring on in your iron. I'm using this tiny little Cricut iron because it's what I keep next to me. Use whatever iron you would like. It does not have to be this one. While that sucker's heating up, I took a minute measuring out the paper. I put this Mod Podge on certain sections because at the current time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to really do the entire box or leave some of that beautiful wood exposed, because if I'm being honest, it kind of matched really well. Let me know in the comments below if you would have did the whole box or if you would even put like some antique wax on the lighter wood, or if you like it just how it is. Let me know your opinion. I'm really interested to hear that. Don't forget your parchment paper. Once you have your piece all set up to go, whatever you're ironing on, grab that parchment paper. It's going to do several things. It's going to protect the iron from sticking to anything. It's going to also prevent some dye from the napkin if you're doing a napkin, if you're doing tissue paper like this. Even, oh goodness, I've even had gift wrap paper where I got a little wild and didn't use the parchment paper, and some of that ink transferred onto the iron. But most importantly, it's also going to stop any Mod Podge that might be around the edges from sticking to your iron and just keep everything intact. I just cut a little piece of parchment paper and I worked from one end to the other, making sure to have all of it as flat as possible so there are no air bubbles as I continue to iron. People, whenever you're doing anything that has curves and you're trying to keep one consistent piece, listen, this is patience, my friends. I know some of you are cussing me out right now. Listen, I love y'all, but listen to your girl. Put your favorite craft channel on the background, cough me, and or, you know, some music. Just relax, okay? Relax, chill, grab the parchment paper, and then iron and curve and just go along. As long as you've got that Mod Podge on all these little sections, on the curves, you are going to be good, okay? You're going to be good. You just got to be slow, making sure that as you're spinning the iron, going around like this, it's attaching, and then just move along. Before you bring in your little sander and get all the extra bits off the edges, go around tugging around the edges, making sure everything is attached. If not, take a little fan brush, smush in around the edges, press it on down, and then wait for that to dry. Then do this step and remove everything. I repeated the process on just the inner part of this box. So the natural wood stayed exposed on the end. I could not bring myself to decoupage the whole thing because I just love this natural wood and how the piece kind of went together. Again, let me know in the comments below if you guys would have did this differently. I really struggled with it just because I felt like it matched so well. Let me know how you would have recreated this. Real quick though, a little tip for anyone doing a large piece or just a piece in general where you get to corners like this and your iron's not fitting in the corners. Get yourself a heat gun or a blow dryer and heat up those corners. And here I'm just using a little card that comes in my little transfer pack. You can use whatever, you know, little plastic bit you got and smoosh it in that corner. What you're doing is heating up the Mod Podge that's underneath of the decoupage paper. So where the iron could not reach, you're able to heat that up and then press, and it goes in that corner that you can't get to with the iron, connecting your paper on the very edge. Feel free to seal this with whatever sealer you feel works best for you. I'm gonna let this dry overnight and probably put a layer of Mod Podge right over the top of it. found this piece at a local thrift store. It was only $1 and we're gonna need to paint it up. When it comes to picking paints for glass, you want to make sure that you pick something that works well with glass to save yourself time and frustration. And people, when in doubt, check the label. It will let you know if the product works well with glass. Here's a couple of my favorites. For this cool idea, we're going to be using some Waverly chalk paint, and the color is called Ballet Slipper, and we're going to add a little bit of this mica powder to it. And people, don't you be asking me no ratios in them comments. Okay, mix with love. Mix with love. I will say add a fair amount of mica powder. It takes a lot when you're mixing it with the paint for it to show up and give you that metallic glow. Whenever I'm painting on glass, I'll usually use a pouncer or a sponge to do the first layer. I've found that when I use a paintbrush, there are streaks and it can be really frustrating trying to build up a layer. The pouncer actually allows me to get a nice coverage with the first coat. And then if I find that the paint didn't self-level out enough to where it looks really smooth, I'll then come back in on the second layer with the paintbrush for a more even coverage, smooth coat. But most of the time, this paint, even though it's Waverly and it's not an artesian paint that costs a whole bunch of money, it levels out pretty well. On the second coat, I'm going to add some Mod Podge in with the mica powder and the paints. This is going to help us completely skip having to seal over this another time. This way our sealant is in the second coat, and we're also going to have a little bit more of a sheen with that metallic finish. You can add whatever little embellishments or accents to decorate your bottle with this beautiful metallic paint. It's completely up to you. I kept it super simple so you can take this idea and remix it at home to make beautiful pieces that you love. I like to take time to really go over the pieces and see what I've gotten myself into. There are quite a bit of stains on them, which for $4, I didn't really care what was wrong with these things. I was like, I'm purchasing it anyway, and I'll deal with it. Anyhow, these I thought would be fun to show you guys at home the importance of stain blockers when painting, even if you're using a flat black paint. So we are not going to put any stain blocker on these before we spray paint and seal them. Whenever you're cleaning your piece of furniture, make sure that you're doing it within your realm of safety and comfort. I like to make sure that I have gloves and face masks on just to be safe because I don't necessarily know what I'm inhaling. There were some really rough parts on this. So part of the paper towels were stuck in the wood. I decided to take 150 grit sandpaper, take them outside, and just really smooth the edges down. To be honest, I didn't want them to be that rough anyway. It had pieces and bits of paper towels in it, but I really just wanted it to be smooth. The paper towels were just like an extra incentive for me to need to sand it. Then I took a flat black spray paint and sprayed them down, and after they dried, I sealed them as well. I let this dry for 24 hours, and I just wanted to show you guys that even black spray paint, if you don't put a stain blocking primer on there, you see how you can see it? You can still see the stain. So it's always important to do a stain blocker, and that way it prevents any bleeding through. Even with a black flat spray paint, it still shines through. Is this a good time to mention that I'm attaching fairy lights to this? Okay. So I decided that we're going to drill a hole so I can attach my fairy lights through the back of this. These are the fairy lights that I really enjoy using. They're very small and compact. I can link them down in the description box for you. These are just such a space saving. You don't need those big old ones that have the big battery packs. This is the stain blocker that I'm going to be going over the flat black with. Once this dried, I just took the same exact flats black spray paints. These hooks I'm going to attach to the wall and actually hang the primitive wall sconce on them. I got them from Hobby Lobby. They were not on sale, so they were exactly $4.99 each. I'm going to take them outside and spray paint them. This I picked up from Hobby Lobby. If you guys have not used this stuff before, it's fun. I have used metal lace before, so this stuff I was really excited to use. You definitely want to get you some metal cutting shears and make sure you're able to cut through the metal with that. Here it is all dry and re-sealed. You can see that the staining is gone. It definitely is important to make sure that you guys are putting on stain blockers, even if it's a black paint, so that way the stains don't show through. I decided for this I was going to make sure that the height of this metal was the same exact height as the hole that I drilled in the back. This stuff is very, very pointy, so be very careful when you are shoving this metal in anything. You're welcome to hot glue it if you want to. I did not want to make this a permanent thing, so I left it unglued. It is definitely stuck in there, situated nicely, so I was not worried about it popping back out. I like versatility in things, so if I'm going to change these later, maybe pop in a mason jar or whatever, I have the versatility to do that. I picked this crate looking thing up at my favorite local thrift spot. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think it is? I think it looks like a crate. It's a crate. It's pretty big. It's over 2 feet long. I think it's like 14 inches. I'm using some crude crud, still not sure how to pronounce that, crudder to clean this piece. I realize it's not coming clean after about 10 minutes. I'm like, there's a problem. I think this is spray paint. No one ever sealed it. So we're going to take this primer and put on there. I'm not sanding it. I'm not doing it. not doing it. We're going to take the primer and we're going to spray it and we're going to make sure that this seals it. So if there's stains or this is going to bleed, it's going to take care of all of that. And then I'm going to take this 2x primer Rust-Oleum and go over it just one time. It took one coat. It was beautiful out this day, so spray painting was a great option. I did take a little bit of clear coat and just do one layer because the details I want to make sure stick on here. I printed this little stencil piece out with my Cricut. You can use whichever stencil you want. I'm just using a little makeup sponge and some black acrylic paint to kind of dab this on here. I want to give it like an antique type of look, and I don't know why I started this out very harsh with a line. You can see like I didn't I'm also dry brushing like the edges to give it a more distressed look with the wood. I see how I kind of stopped with the black right there. I don't know why I did that. I go back and fix it later so it all blends. I was having a moment. It might have been a 2 cup of coffee kind of morning and I only drank one. Not sure. But I really loved how it looked once I peeled it off. And then on the opposite side, I did it at the bottom in the front and started with the dry brushing first to bring in all the edges. And this one I blended really well and went back and fixed the other side to look more like this one. I also took and did all up the sides to give it more of a distressed look. Even though we're going to come in with the sandpaper, I wanted this piece to just look aged and have like its own presence. I had such an amazing idea for this. I wasn't sure if I should add more florals than I did, but this is what I came up with. These are Prima transfers. Our last giveaway, we did do Prima transfer giveaway, and of course I still have more, and I actually bought the transfers for this particular project. I seen this and thought I had just the most amazing idea. So this is why we're using them. If you've never used Prima transfers before, let me just tell you, they're fairly easy, but you need some elbow grease. It's a little bit more difficult than if you're my Dollar Tree people up in here who's my Dollar Tree crafters. They're a little bit more difficult than the transfers, so you got to put some elbow grease into it. I did decide to cut some pieces of that stencil up I printed out with the Cricut and just add little accents on the opposite ends of the front of this crate, and really love these tiny details. When I was all finished with everything, before I sealed it, I took some 400 grit and then went lightly around the entire piece, distressing all the edges and even inside where some of the crate pieces are, where the flowers, and it just looks I also picked this up for about 15 bucks, and I've been told it looks like a wishing well. Let me know. Do you think it looks like a wishing well? I'm going to rip the top off, and we're going to use an 80 grit sandpaper with my cordless Ryobi sander to make that happen. But of course, having a time with this, you know. Oh my. My kids have such a time at my expense. Like, I tell you what, man, you should hear some of these kids. I did go by hand and take an 80 grit piece of sandpaper and do a scuff sand over the entire piece before I took a primer and went over this. I needed to tape the bottom off. You want to make sure that if you're going to stain a section, that you tape a section, and they have other stuff that you can buy people for this to protect your, this is how I'm rolling with it, okay? Paper towels, painter's tape, covered the top, and then I'm just going to prime the bottom and put some white Rust-Oleum paint on here. I feel like it's beautiful out. Let's get the spray painting done instead of hand painting, because, you know, sometimes hand painting is tedious, and I'm just not in the mood. I want to spray paint. I like to spray paint. I put one more coat on this and brought it in the house. Now, if you're not familiar with this, people, bear with me. I wanted to decoupage this beautiful vintage looking napkin I picked up from Christmas tree shops. They have beautiful napkins, and I watched a video that Holly over at Hot Humble Pie did, and she was burning the edges to give it like this vintage look. So please be safe, people. Like, at this, I am not responsible. So if you're going to burn something, just be. I watched Holly do it. I thought this would be an amazing add-on. I love Holly. So I decided to do that with this piece and put the napkin on there with some Mod Podge. Now, I then take this stencil that I've used before and go over top of the decoupage in different variations of colors, giving it a different look, blends to, because we're going to do some stain art on the top. So I really kind of wanted all of these to just kind of blend in with everything. Now that it's all said and done, future me is telling you, I wish I would have put more napkins underneath the stencils, but I was already in it at this point and did not feel like starting over. I paid $15 for the piece. I really didn't want to spend days and days and days because I'm not reselling it for hundreds of dollars, and it's just not going to be worth the hassle of ripping it all off and redoing it. So I then distressed the same way I did with the crate and added in some of the color distress, and then in a little bit you'll see we go over with the sandpaper. And don't be afraid to get messy, people. Get your fingers in there, smush it all around. You know, that's the fun of it, to get dirty. Look, I love when I'm all done and my hands are just 10 different colors because I'm like, man, I was having a good time. Now it's time for my favorite part. We are going to do some stain art on the top of this and blend some colors in. As you can see here, I have them all set up so you can get a good idea of about how much water and about how much paint is going into this. I do have other videos where I go a little bit more into detail, so I can link that below for you. But I'm going to keep this short and sweet, people, short and sweet. I'm starting this off with my lightest color and allowing that to kind of soak in here. I do try to wait a couple minutes in between switching colors to let it dry, and then as I start the blend and get a beautiful blend on top of a beautiful blend, I'll let it dry for 30 minutes here, an hour there. It really depends on the weather. Sometimes it's warmer, sometimes it's colder. On this particular day, I was able to get all of this done in just a few hours. I do want to stress, though, if you go to do this, it's so important to go the entire length of the wood grain. It will be splotchy, people. It'll be splotchy if you stop in the middle. You want it to look like this, where it's just so smooth. And once you continue layering this, it starts to blend and it just looks beautiful. And also, if you get in certain areas you have too much, don't be afraid to take a paper towel or your dry sponge and take off some of that paint. But here it is. Here it is as I let it dry for one last time. That was the very end of it. And I put a poly on it to seal it. Now, this is distress, right? We're distressing. So I'm going to go in here with my sandpaper and distress all these little edges. I do leave some spots out because I didn't want to just do the whole thing. I wanted it to look kind of organic. So I just did heavy in some spots, light in other spots, and did go in between all of these little wood pieces. I really love the way that this aged piece turned out. It's so stunning. this palette box the last time I was in Goodwill, and I was super excited that they had it this trip because it's only $1.99, and I love wood boxes. Plus it has this beautiful engraving on the side, Napa Valley Box Company. I always find spray painting palettes to be way easier than hand painting them, so we're gonna give this a nice coat of this beautiful Rust-Oleum Ultra Matte spray paint in the sand dollar color. There is so much you can do with a piece like this, but I'm gonna stick a mason jar in the center and add a little lantern piece from Dollar Tree right on top. For a little something something, I decided to add just a little bit of greenery around our mason jar. Obviously, put whatever you want in here. That's completely up to you and your decor in your home, or in this Upcycled's case, an outdoor centerpiece. If you want to create a piece like this and keep it outside, make sure you're using the proper outdoor sealer to be able to do so. And I would recommend bringing in the greenery and the lantern if you're not using it. I love how adding just a little paint and a little bit of greenery to this piece can create such an easy high-end looking piece on such a teeny tiny budget. If I'm being honest, people, I really like this tin metal galvanized bucket, whatever you want to call it, that I picked up from Goodwill, just like it is. It was only $2.99. I was like, we could just throw some stuff in it and call it a day, but I like to make myself miserable, and here you're going to go through that with me. First, with the cleaning, okay? Some dish soap, some water, get the suds going. To be honest with you, this piece is a little crusty musty, okay? There were some crusty bits on the inside. We can't be painting anything with crusty bits, okay? We got to get all the things that were around the little butterfly design off. We're going to use this Rustic Pink Rust-Oleum 2x Ultra Matte spray paint for our bucket. So say goodbye to the green. I know I'm a little sad about it, but I feel like this is a good pick for the project. I had to take a quick trip to Dollar Tree for one of these things. I know, Brandy, what is it? Listen, it's like a pool noodle, but it's not. It's like an elbow macaroni noodle. Even though you like the longer ones, you sometimes settle for the shorter ones because it just makes sense. I'm sorry. If nobody else gets that, I'm sorry. If you love elbow noodles, keep loving them. I just, we really don't use them in our house unless they're like the last resort. I'm sorry. Anyway, that is the purpose of this pool noodle. It is the last resort. They really had the other ones, but this one is what we needed. So we're going to cut about 2 inches off the top, and I just sliced through it with my scissors. This portion of the video really is subject to how you plan on using this. I'm going to keep this inside, but I'm going to stage it outside. You're going to see what I'm talking about. If you're going to use it for outside, make sure you're putting something heavy in it so this way it don't blow away. I'm using newspaper so it will hold our plunger that we picked up from Dollar Tree also. This is going to house our topiary piece that we are about to create. So I'm just removing the top and then sticking it in here. Our little pool noodle piece is going to fit gingerly right over top of this plunger, shimmied on down into our little galvanized bucket here. The newspaper is going to help keep this level, and then this is going to ensure that anything that could be bouncing around is not, because it just works. There are a lot of different ways you can create the topiary piece. I'm going to use 4 of these from Dollar Tree. If you want to purchase a large circular piece, you go right ahead. This is just what I wanted to do for this. And to glue everything together, I'm going to be using these foam Surebonder glue sticks along with some tacky glue. But first, we have to cut a little hole in the center of 2 of these foam pieces, so that way they're going to fit snug down onto our wood plunger stick. I started with the hot glue where I created the hole for the first attachment and then continued by gluing the rest of the pieces together. I'm gonna take this tacky glue to make sure that all our pieces are sticking together, and it's gonna hold all this messy moss we're about to put on here, making sure to smear it where all the little creases are. So once everything completely dries, even if there is a chance it's gonna come apart with those hot foam sticks, this tacky glue is gonna make me feel fuzzy inside, and I know it's not gonna come apart. When I was happy with how much of the tacky glue I smeared onto here, I used some of the foam stick hot glue in certain sections, spreading it out just to help me out to get this stuff on here for a quick hold while I'm creating this video for y'all at home. And because I'm me and feel like I'm bulletproof when I'm crafting, I forgot to put something on my fingers. Ow, 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 it's just in there. It's just in there. Oh, it burns. Look at me just carrying on like a champ. A little bit of melted skin. Never stop me. Decorate your topiary piece however you choose. I decided to add a couple florals in here and call it a day. This piece I picked up from Goodwill. At first glance, it did not look like it was going to be much trouble. I did love the design, the cute little bird holes, adorable. I love the price even more for $3.99. And truthfully, I'm never scared of a little elbow grease. However, as I started trying to pry this metal piece off the top, I realized that sucker was kind of on there. And once I actually got it off, oh my goodness, the rust that was under here. Ugh. And it didn't get any better once I got the whole sucker off. I was like, oh, nobody wants to deal with cleaning this and prepping it, but here we go. To give this piece a good scrub down, I'm using Dawn dish detergent and some hot water, and I scrubbed this sucker down 3 times. If I had some Krug Kutter and my local Walmart wasn't out of Krug Kutter, I would have saturated this entire piece in it, but I had to make do with what I had and the time constraints I was under for this video. So I gave this thing a good scrub down 3 times. I let it dry, and then as you can see here, there are some it's loose paint. It's loose now. If I was going to strip it and start fresh, that'd be one thing, but we're not doing that. So a shortcut is to take a piece of sandpaper, and since there is so much paint on here, I'm using 80 grit, okay? Because I want to get these chunky bits off of here. I went around the entire piece, getting off as much excess that was just kind of loose or hanging there or rough, to try and make this prepping a little bit easier on me. I didn't film it, but when I was completely done sanding, I grabbed a microfiber cloth and went over the piece, making sure to get all of the extra crusty bits from the sanding completely off. You want to make sure you don't have any of that before you start painting, so this way you don't have anything that it's not supposed to be there in your paint. But in our case, in our bullseye primer, we are going to give this a nice primer coat. Since this piece had so much going on with it, I just feel better putting a primer on this to make sure if there's any stains that are coming through, if any of that rust is still in those holes because I didn't get it out when I was cleaning. It just makes me feel like this is all completely sealed in, protected, and prepped, ready for some paints. And people, this should go without saying, but make sure that you're wearing whatever PPE you feel is necessary whenever you're prepping pieces like this. For our paint, I'm just going to give this a layer of Rust-Oleum Ultra Matte in the sand dollar. When everything was all dry, I grabbed my Waverly ink chalk paint and give the roof a little paint job. I then took the same paint with a pouncer and applied a very distressed rustic stencil right in the center. We had to put the rooftop back on, so I grabbed me some of Dollar Tree's metal lace and just kind of lined it up. They have different designs. This is the one I decided to go with, but we're gonna need to bring on in the stapler so we can apply this metal lace on top of our roof. Feel free to add some glue doing this if you want. I am confident that my staples will hold this in here for what I need it for, and that is gonna be it for this makeover. Start this off by seeing exactly what I'm getting myself into. The appearance of this is a little bit deceiving because from the look it's rather big, but in reality it's kind of small, which is why I fell in love with it. It's only 19 inches, well, about 18 and a half inches wide and 17 inches tall. Not even 2 feet, no matter which way you look at it, people. This mirror piece has seen better days, and I don't even know where the mirror is. And this joint right here, it's literally on the half. Their drawers are in good structural condition, but there is some bowing in the bottom. We're gonna need to fix that later. And this is the moment you're witnessing right here that I noticed this, and we'll get to that too. But before we do, a quick look at the very top, which is in great condition. No major stains or anything like that at first glance. To clean this piece, I'm going to use Dixie Belle's White Lightning, and I put it in a spray bottle, and of course the spray bottle was not cooperating with me. It took me a moment to realize I had to turn the little knob, but I got it working. Listen, I was having a moment, okay? I'm entitled to it. But I do want to show you this. Look at all the nasty bits separating and pulling in this cleaner. I really love this stuff. I'll be using this going forward. And yes, the directions say to put it in a bucket, and I'm using a spray bottle because I want to clean it. You clean your piece how you want. Stop judging me. And look at this. Blech, blech, blech. The whole piece was that dirty. So here is some of what we're dealing with. The back of this is cracked. And this side right here, let's see if I can focus. There we go. This is, it needs some wood glue. Now I know I'm probably going to get some heat for this, but I'm going to take this off. I feel like to reattach this and then put the mirror on here is going to be a lot more work than what I'm going to get out of it. This is a chisel, and you can use this or a pry bar or something like this to separate when you're trying to separate things. However, this is the moment I noticed those nails right there. So that was not prying out so well. So I dug the wood filler out of there. Oh, yes. And we're just gonna, screws. All right, please don't let this be wood glued down. We'll see what happens. Just gonna keep, oh my God, I have no hand strength some days. Oh. The nail came out fairly easy once I got it off, out of there. And then whatever this was, wood glue, wood filler, something, it scraped off fairly easy as well. Ew. Ew. Yucky. For this part, I'm just taking a putty knife and smooshing in the DAP Premium Wood Filler and all the little... There was so much more damage than I thought, you know, at a quick glance. And going to get all this in. We're going to have to let this dry 24 hours. This thing was nailed down into sections. And whoever did this, it was probably their shortcut into, you know, not wanting to take the time to put the wood filler under here. But now there's, you know, these holes in here. So as you can see, I'm coming back in with the wood filler. I did it. Let me back up. I put it on each, you know, here. And oh gosh, you remember that nasty. I cleaned all that up. We got the holes. I just came back out. Now, the wood filler I used, it shrunk. So, and that's going to happen. I'm not holding the wood filler accountable. It shrunk in there. So when you have that happen, you need to then put another layer on there, because when you sand, you want it to be as flat as you can possibly get it. Now, the cracks and stuff that were in the back of this, so I'm dealing with that. There are, oh God, I just hurt my knee. Okay, suck that up. See, these holes were also, there's a huge crack here, and the wood filler is kind of sinking in, and it's not a big deal, but because there is so much going on with this, I'm going to spend several days on it. I decided I'm going to give this entire piece a nice scuff sand using my Ryobi orbital sander and 180 grit sandpaper. And I do want to warn you that be mindful of swirl marks if you use an orbital sander. All the videos I've watched, no one ever warned me about these swirl marks. But if you're not cleaning your piece, getting the dust off in between and applying too much pressure one side to the next, you know, and being real fast, it can leave those marks. So you've been warned. No one warned me. I'm warning you. This is the struggle. You know, I'm here to help you. To do the tiny little pieces, I just took an 800 grit thin piece, wrapped it around a sanding block, and then went in by hand to, you know, not make a giant issue with the orbital sander on the little pieces. And to clean off the dust, I'm just taking a tack cloth, doing a once over the whole piece, getting all that stuff off. Look at that crusty sand bits. We need to get it all off of there. And then taking a damp, wet, you know, paper towel, and then I just let it dry. You're welcome to do this however you want if you got a blower. I was being lazy. I didn't feel like getting, you know, the thing out. Taking 1, 2, 3 Bullseye primer. This is my favorite spray paint primer. If you're not familiar with me, I'm a spray paint girl, and you know, if I can spray paint, get around a couple little quick edges, but I really just like the application of this stuff. Remember I said the drawers were bowing a little bit, so to fix that I took some shims and spread them across the entire bottom. If you have a long piece of wood, that'll work too. I use wood glue to attach them to each other and everything, slide them out and nail in the sides with the nail gun, the wood glue, and here is the shims that I used for this. We're going to be using these 3 paints from Dixie Belle to create like an ombre look over the piece. And we're going to do that and blend it in several different sections. My ideas just kept falling through the cracks with this piece because one thing wasn't there. I'm not going to bore y'all with that. But basically, this was the look I landed on. And I absolutely am in love with the final finish of it. But back to the blending. So I took the 3 colors and I'm using them and just alternating. You're going to also see me using my zebra brush and a chippy brush here. And the reason I did that is I wanted to show you all that it does not always have to be the $10 and $20 and $30 brushes to create something beautiful. I'm literally using some Walmart chippy brushes. Now I do I would not use the Home Depot ones or Home Depot ones because not all chippy brushes are created equal, but I do really like the quality of the ones that they have at Walmart. I also do want to reiterate that I am a DIY entertainment channel. I bring y'all along with my DIY journeys. This is my side hustle. I don't go in depth on tutorial-ish stuff with my furniture. I just, show you these for inspiration. If you're looking for more, step by step, there are amazing creators that do that. One is Katja, another is Brush by Brandy. My favorite is Kristana, and I'm sure there are so many other ones. You can drop the comments down below. Feel free, because I know people talk in my comments. We chat down there, so help other people out that may be here, to get information out. I'm all about trying to help people grow, and if this is your hustle, this is your business, by all means, take the information and learn from it. I did one coat over the entire piece, and I blend as I go. I don't do just one solid, and then I feel like if you get a base blend coat on here and then you kind of let it dry, it really helps the next day when you come to go over it and really blend in everything. For the top, I left it kind of stripey. I mixed in the 3 colors. I did not mix them very well, and I did this also on my blue desk for my daughter. If you have not seen that, I can pop a little picture here and link it in the description box, where it just gives a very, very beautiful gradient. See how I just want to show you again, like it's still stripey, like the paint colors, you can see them, but it will do this to the top of your piece. It just gives you so many different colors without you having to blend, layer after layer after layer. It just does it in one coat, and I really like the look. But we're gonna let this dry and then come back. Well, I let this dry and come back because I already made the piece. This is the video, and this is where we're going to do the blending. And this is about as tutorial-ish as I'm gonna get with this. I'm just gonna spend a second just describing it as best as I can so that way you have an understanding from this video of how I do it, and then go check out those other creators for more in-depth information. Whenever you're blending, you'll want a paintbrush for each color, and then a neutral brush that you keep dry with, over and over to blend the colors. And you want to keep everything wet. Use a paper towel to constantly keep cleaning it, but back and forth, up and down, and it will slowly start to look like that instead of look like this. It's not a perfect blend, but this is where I'm leaving it. You'll see why we're getting there. I would go over it a third time if I wasn't going through all this next stuff, but we're going to start with the stencils, and these are going on the drawers. I purchased them from Amazon. We're going to do a little bit of a raised stencil using some joint compound, this Rust-Oleum metallic, and we're going to add a little bit of paint to it, just some, a light paint color, just to make it stand out a little bit more. We're going to put it on the front of the drawers and tape the drawers together all on top of one another, and find the center of your drawer, mark them straight down, so that way you can put one of these little keyholes on the center of the drawer. I do cut the stencil. I'm not worried about it. I didn't pay that much for the stencil, so this is just what's working best for me. I mix everything in with the joint compound, and it's kind of like a buttery, it's like a cream cheese. It's kind of like a cream cheese paste. And then make sure that your painter's tape is, a little bit tacky-tized so it's not too sticky. And then apply you can do this as thick as you want. You can use fancy tools. I'm using a popsicle stick. I mean, I'm not too complicated here. If it's free, it's flat, I'm using it, and look at it. Look at that. These turned out so beautiful, and I did let them dry 24 hours before I came back and added a little bit of extra shading on the sides. But while that was drying, we're going to now take 3 different colors with our makeup sponges and start doing like an ombre effect on this beautiful stencil. Again, I picked these up from Amazon. You can just, type in stencils. There's 6-inch stencils on Amazon, and, so many options come up, people. Options, and they're not really expensive. On the ends, I did take that same Rust-Oleum metallic to give it that, it's kind of shiny, but it's not shiny. And I went and did this every other, like on the side, and then in the very center I only did, well, not the center, the very center, on the opposites of every other I just did metallic, and I did it in light and heavy spots all over it. I really, really, really appreciate the ombre look of the paint, how it came out in the stencil, and to finish the whole piece, just tie it all in, I'm just taking a whitewash, a little bit of the Dixie Belle paint, some water, a t-shirt, wiping it back with little sections. I wouldn't do a whole section, it depends on project looked like a strainer to me. I know, kind of weird, right? But it was wood, and you guys know how I feel about wood. And other than these staples that were randomly all over this piece, I thought for $2 we can turn this into something really nice. For our first order of business, we had to bring in the stapler remover. And we had to get rid of all these staples that were kind of stuck in there. Plus I wanted to get rid of this back strainer piece. I don't really know what it was used for, but we're not going to use it for anything. So the cool thing about this little staple remover that I have here, that just still ain't coming right out my mouth, the staple removal, is it has like a hook. See it? Like it just kind of, it can squeeze, you know, things. And I like it. Anyhow, once it was all cleared off, I did clean this with my Dixie Belle's White Lightning and let it dry. And then we're going to take some of this Rust-Oleum, again, black charcoal matte paint, and give it a nice coat. Now that it's dry, I'm going to take some more of this galvanized metal that I received from Ginger, one of my subscribers, in a wonderful little box, and we're going to make us a pocket. And I'm going to cover up these staple holes that are in the bottom here with it. And remember, I said I'm not filling them up, okay? I'm being real lazy. We're keeping this real simple. We're keeping it real simple. So I'm tracing the inside of this, and then I'm going to actually cut about a 1/4 inch outside of the trace so it goes over our wood area. If I would have cut it exactly, it would have just kind of fit in the hole, and I wanted it to lay on top so we could trim out our pocket that we're creating here. Also, if you wanted to create a double pocket, feel free. I figured the wall will be in the back so it'll catch whatever you're putting in here. I had used Gorilla Glue gel to attach this and some staples, and then realized ooh, oh, project is glued to my hand. That's great. In my mind, I didn't think the gel would squeeze out beyond the metal, but it did. So be careful, learn from my mistakes, people, okay? Be careful. It will squeeze out and stick to you. Next, I'm just taking a piece of trim that I purchased from Home Depot and using these miter shears that I cannot get open. Embarrassing enough on camera. Sometimes, I don't know, that little screw gets stuck on the side or I forget to actually move it. So I just used the miter shears because they do work amazing on dowels and trim to cut these trim pieces to size. However, I don't know, I started becoming very clumsy. was able to add these beautiful transfers on here that I have from Prima, just for a little extra something. Really, you could paint whatever on here, maybe add some chalk paint so you can write chalk things, but again, just thought these little transfer pieces would add just the perfect amount of something. Let me know what y'all think of this one. Who's ready for another mason jar craft? You? Alrighty then. This is going to definitely be the most simple one I've done, and it is a true blue mason jar I picked up from the thrift store. So we are going to just take some flat black, you know, that black spray paint that we're using, and we're going to give this a nice coat of it. Once it dries, we're going to just take some painter's tape and we're going to de-stickitize it. Is that a word? It is today. We're going to de-stickitize it. I even put it on my shirt just to kind of make sure, because I don't want it to rip off my paint. But we do want to tie this off just below the brim of our jar. And honestly, you're going to want to do this an extra layer down if I'm being real with you, because the gold spray paint speckled and then I had to respray paint the black. So I'm just taking this and doing the top, giving it a little gold dusting, and it ended up being a little hot in my patio, so the gold paint did kind of crinkle. You'll see it in the reveal. It still looks good, but make sure you're watching your temperatures when you're spray painting. This large wood piece I picked up from the thrift store was only $1, and it is real solid and it is real big, and these ducks, they're gonna have to go. So a moment of silence, people. Say goodbye. Okay, so to start off, we are going to sand down this piece, and I'm going to take 100 grit and wrap it around my little sand block here that is like a 220 grit. And we're going to give this a nice once over. This is going to sand down this paint, so this way it doesn't bump up as we go to paint over it. And then we're going to take this sand block and smooth it all down so there's no lumpy bumpies anywhere. In the process of this is where I noticed there was a little crack going on, so I shoved some wood glue down there to fix it. But people, make sure you wash off all your crusty bits before you start painting. Make sure that there's nothing on there so it doesn't get stuck in your paint. Next, we're just going to trim off this area. And here's a little trick for you if you have something that curves. Do little slices of your painter's tape as you go. This way, when you go to rip it off, it's very easy. Once you get it all painter's taped up, it's time for our spray paint. When you're fuzzy inside about the drying, you take the painter's tape and just pull it off. And the way we put it on here, look at this little trick. It is all going to peel off at one time. You don't have to actually peel off in little tiny pieces. Cool, right? Next, we're going to take this piece I got from Hobby Lobby and these two little crate boxes I got from Dollar Tree and add them onto our piece. However, we're going to stain them first with the antique Waverly wax. The reason I'm using this versus anything else is I wanted to keep the natural wood on this wall piece. And Waverly wax, I don't know if you know this or not, but you can actually make faux wood out of it just using cardboard or paper stock. So if you take this over wood that has already been sanded like this, it's going to just fill in the little blank spots. And look how stunning it turns out. And you don't have to do a lot of work to it. It's a simple, easy way to kind of just fill in any unevenness with wood and still just keep on going without having to use them chemical stains that take forever to dry. Next, I glued the pieces using my Gorilla Glue gel, and I then clamped them down so that way they would stay in place for about 30 minutes. I did attach little cup hooks to the bottom, so this way if somebody wanted to use this for a key holder, that they could. And that's going to be it for this one. As always, people, thank y'all so much for hanging out with me today. If you're looking for more upcycling inspiration, check out this video right here. And until next time.